Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us on the Survey and Spatial webinar titled Due Diligence, Health and Safety. This is a webinar series that we're running over the next couple of weeks. Our presenter today is Emma Blackburn. Emma has been the owner of Maxtrix Safety and Compliance since November 2019. She advises and supports boards with their health and safety governance, provides audit, risk and safety guidance and coaching in health and safety, facilitating learning teams and other process improvement activities and drafting documentation. She is proud to support a range of clients from one-person businesses to organisations of over 3,000 people. Emma started her career by completing degrees in aerospace engineering and management, and then spent over 17 years in the Royal Navy as an air engineer officer, specialising in aircraft operations at sea. Her final role was in helicopter carrier HMS Ocean as air engineer officer, safety oversight of operators and maintenance operations, and quality manager for the aviation teams in the ship. She conducted numerous investigations, including a statutory aircraft accident, process and systems failures, and taught emergency response management for shipboard operations. Before I hand you over to Emma, this is just a reminder to everybody online, if you do have any questions at all throughout the presentation, please pop them into the Q&A box on Slido, and Emma is happy to answer those as the presentation goes through. So I'll hand you over to Emma now. Thank you.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for that introduction, Jenny. I hope I'm going to provide some interesting information for you today. Always happy to take feedback and questions as we go. I'm going to look today at what due diligence means, particularly for officers under the Health and Safety at Work Act, and how it applies in your sector. Please excuse me while there we go. Right, so this is what I'm planning to cover. A quick introduction to the Health and Safety at Work Act for those of you who are a bit dusty on it. Then we're going to look specifically at due diligence. A question that I get asked a lot is who is an officer? So we're going to cover that. And then there was some very useful guidance put out last year from the Institute of Directors and WorkSafe. So we're going to then use that to apply how we do due diligence in businesses. I'm then going to give you the negative side of all this, which is a little bit about the implications of not doing this and a couple of case studies, one of which you will definitely know about because it's been all over the news. And we'll then do some practical steps. I hope that's kind of what you're expecting me to cover, and we'll get right into it. So, as most of you will be aware, the Health and Safety at Work Act was formed in 2014 after the Pike River disaster, with an intention of looking at creating a framework for health and safety across New Zealand. It was based in large part on the structure that is used in the UK Health and Safety Executive approach, and it is an enabling act. It is designed to enable you to do what you need to do, not tell you what you need to do. And sometimes that does cause some confusion. It is applicable to organizations. We call them persons conducting a business or undertaking. Basically, that means any business, whether you are a solo operator, whether you're a limited company, whether you're a partnership, whether you are a multinational global corporate, or whether you are a volunteer community. It applies to all of those different organizations. And then there are two groups of people within the Act. There are the officers, and I will come on to them a bit later, and the workers. And basically, you are either an officer or a worker. There's a lot of assumption about what is a supervisor. A supervisor under the Health and Safety at Work Act is a worker. So this is designed to be a framework for all industries, including those which you work in and those which you work with. And a lot of the time, different industries apply the same rules in different ways. And that is how the Act is supposed to work. So why does due diligence matter? You will know from the due diligence that you have to do in your business that it has particular implications for what you need to achieve. In my space, in the health and safety world, there are three key elements to it. It's main role and the role that came out of the Pike River accident was really prevention of harm and saving lives. By understanding and doing your due diligence in your business, you make your business safer. It is a legal requirement, and we're going to cover that legal requirement a bit later on in this presentation. And therefore, you can be held accountable for not doing it. So therefore, it matters because you need to know what to do. And then the other bit, which kind of links the two together, is that it facilitates the building of a positive safety culture in your business. The term safety culture is often misused and misaligned. A lot of the time we now talk just about culture because safety culture is a subset of everything else. But basically it means an environment where everybody wants to go to work. If something happens, you manage it, you carry on. It's not going to be the end of the world. So this is the crux of it. This is the due diligence regulation under the Health and Safety at Work Act. If you are an officer, you are expected to take reasonable steps. One of the discussion points that we have a lot of the time is what is a reasonable step. And effectively, it's anything that you can do that is viable for your organization. So it has to be financially viable. It has to enable your capability in your operations and not hinder them to the extent that you can't do your job. And it has to be something that will add value to you. Sometimes I see businesses where actually they've put lots of stuff in place, but it's not actually helping them do their business, at which point it's not a reasonable step for them to take. There are 6 specific points. You are expected to understand, to acquire knowledge and understand health and safety. That does not mean you need to be an expert, but it does mean you need to understand your role in the health and safety within your organization, and you need to keep abreast of the changes. So, for example, this week, the Workplace Relations Minister has just made an announcement about her latest changes to WorkSafe. So being aware of that happening and what the implications are for your organization is part of your role. If you're a senior leader, you need to understand the operations and associated risks within your business. If you are one step away from the work happening at the coalface, actually, you need to make it your business to know what is going on. If you are a leader who works directly in the business, you are going to understand what is going on. And your role then is to be able to give yourself the ability to take a step back. Look at what the risks are and how you are managing them. Are you comfortable with what you're doing? Another part of the requirement is to ensure that you have resources and processes to eliminate or minimize risk. We're going to cover risk as a topic at the next webinar. Suffice to say at this point that everything we do has risk. Even sitting on a chair has risk. And in fact, the most common injury at home is getting out of bed in the morning. So everything has risk. Part of the role of the ownership and the leadership of a business is actually to identify what those risks are and either eliminate them or minimize them as far as possible. And your role as an officer is to ensure that you have everything you need in order to do that. You need to make sure that your processes for incident hazard reporting are in place and that they work. The other bit that you need to do is make sure that if somebody has an incident and it is investigated, you tell them what the outcome of that investigation was. If I fall over and I slip over on the pavement, actually, the implications might not be significant. But if somebody has brittle bone disease and they fall over on a pavement, that's a significant issue for them, and they will want to know how it can be minimized in the future. The more you understand how your business works and what the hazards are and what the people who are working in that business see every day, the better you will be able to identify how to help them overcome them. But they see it, not you. So you are dependent on them reporting issues, and then they are dependent on you doing something about it and telling them what they need to change as a result. Ensuring compliance processes are implemented. This is about audit and inspection. This is about compliance with your industry body requirements legal requirements, your clients' requirements, and your team's needs to make sure that everyone is doing what they need to do in a way that you can assure. The last item is verification of resources and processes. So make sure things are actually working. So if you have an audit process, you do actually need to verify that what it's auditing is useful, that the outcome of the audit is useful, and that any actions identified are being taken. You also need to overlay on that what resource requirements you have, what risks you are mitigating by doing that, and whether you're actually focusing on the right things for your business. One of the aspects that Brook van Velden has changed this year is taking us towards looking at critical risk. If you are a senior leader or an owner of a business, critical risk are the most important risks that you should be thinking about. They're the risks that you talk about every day. It's the things that keep you awake at night. The way you manage those is by these verification processes, by making sure that what you have in place is working for you. So I mentioned officers a couple of times. Another common query that I get is, am I an officer because I am? And it might be the foreman, the site supervisor. It might be a health and safety advisor or a health and safety partner. It might be the HR manager, or it might be the finance manager. None of those are officers. Officially, an officer in New Zealand is the director of a company, or if you're in a partnership, your partners, the board members, and the CEO of that business. And then the other person on that list is anyone with a significant influence over management. The thing with the significant influence over management is that people often assume that means it's your health and safety person. It's not normally your health and safety person. There is one recent example, which was a health and safety consultancy who did similar kind of work that I do. And they were taken to court because they provided advice and guidance, identified a significant risk for a business, and then said they would deal with it. But they didn't deal with it. And then an accident occurred. So they were actually somebody with a significant influence over the management of health and safety. And they didn't take the action they needed to take. Who is not an officer is often the most important question your staff will ask. As I mentioned earlier, you are either an officer or a worker. If you're not an officer, you are a worker. The regulations require specific things of workers as well, in terms of participating in training, reporting incidents and hazards, participating in competency assessments and health and safety meetings and activities to assure their own safety. You can be taken to court and prosecuted as a worker, but not under the due diligence regulations. So I mentioned those 6 responsibilities. What does that actually look like? What is it that I'm asking you as a health and safety person to do in amongst everything else you're doing in your busy day? You have to stay informed. Read the paper. Most basic way. Watch the news. Look at stuff. Because significant legislative updates will happen there. Some of the things that are happening that you might not be so aware of is the discussions in the emerging in the safety space. Over the last 20 years, we've had a number of different ways of dealing with safety being put forward. They all have different terminology, they have different titles, and they have different approaches. They're all effectively the same thing. Communicating with our team to make sure that what we're doing is as safe as it possibly can be, and that actually we are doing as much as we can to assure the processes that we have in place. How you do that is entirely up to you. Different businesses and different environments and cultures will do that in different ways, but understanding what's coming out in the safety space gives you ideas and options. Risk management is obviously a key element. As a senior manager or a board member, you must understand risk. You must understand what the risks are in your business and how you are managing them. And you need to be able to assess whether you are happy with those processes in place. Sadly, I always have to come to paperwork. And yes, you do have to keep paperwork. The main things are accident, incidents, near misses, reports of them, responses to them, and actions taken as a result of them, plus training and audit and inspection records. Because that community of paperwork shows that you are identifying what is going on in the business, you're looking at how you can manage the risk, and you're dealing with the outcome of risk when it occurs. There is also a section within the regulations about communication and worker participation. This is another area that is currently being reviewed, and guidance is going to be produced on how to do it better, because this is a topic that comes up a lot. My favorite mechanism for doing engagement is by doing what we call a Gemba, which, thanks to Mr. Toyota, is an opportunity where a senior manager goes out into the team and just understands what they do. They ask questions, they watch and learn. They do not assume and they do not direct. It is a information gathering facility. By doing that, people can tell you what they're doing. They can tell you what goes well for them, what they're struggling with, how they make the workarounds that you didn't know existed. In order to do that, you then create a visible leadership environment. The most important thing, if you don't work on the tools every day, is knowing what the people working on the tools are doing, and the environment they're working in, and what they're having to deal with. You can only do that if they talk to you, and if you ask them honest questions and they give you honest answers. To do that, they need to feel comfortable that you will accept what they say and not ignore it. I thought I'd put it another way. So last year, the Institute of Directors and WorkSafe produced guidance. I'm not sure how clear this diagram is on your screen, but basically it's a circular diagram with your industry's good practices in the middle, your health and safety guidance and support around the outside, and you might have internal and or external advice. And they are providing you with feedback on what is working within your team. And then you have the company management and the governance elements. So the practical operational activity that you need to conduct and how you govern how that is done. And then around the outside, there are elements that you are expected to do. As governance, you set expectations. The board, senior management, owner, senior leadership team will set the way stuff is done. They will set the business strategy, both on a whole business direction and also in terms of how you're going to get more business, how you're going to keep your business, and how you're going to do that in a compliant and safe way. A simple example of that is a lot of businesses are currently going through pre-qual processes. So they're pre-qualifying their safety systems because that makes them more saleable as an offering. Doing that activity costs time, effort, and money, but the outcome of that strategic decision is that you are a more eligible option for your potential clients. You then obviously need to deliver to your expectations. So this is your own individual business expectations, but also the expectations of your clients. As a company, you need to then look at how it is performing and how you are engaging with your team. One of the things that often is a lot of confusion about, especially with really small businesses, is performance. Health and safety performance is something that WorkSafe expects. It's in the regulations. And it is something that I, as a consultant, come out and tell you, you need to look at what you're doing in that space. And I get furrowed brows because people find it quite confusing. Health and safety performance used to be all about not injuring people. And for a while in New Zealand, there was a lot of interest in the concept of zero harm. And performance was seen as zero harm being achieved. In today's environment, we're much more interested in looking at performance in a holistic way. And we tend to think about it in terms of, are people feeling comfortable to report? Are people able to do what they need to do in an efficient manner? Do we give them the training and the information that they need? Have they got the resources that they need to do that job as quickly and as efficiently as possible? A lot of the time, with a lot of the AI resources and other online tools available, digitization is providing performance resources. Are we using those? And then the last thing is to understand. So I mentioned those 6 requirements of an officer, and verifying and understanding what you're looking at and what it means for your business. So that's the closing part of the loop. If this looks too generic and too broad for you, this is the other way that the IOD has put it. And I really like this. So they have 5 aspects that they expect an officer to do. And those 5 principles reflect the 6 elements of the due diligence regulations. So learning and developing. So as a senior leadership team, learning about what the health and safety requirements of your team are, what works, what doesn't. Ensuring you understand what that is and feedback your understanding to your team. Anticipate and understand, which is going into understanding your risks. There is only one constant thing in business, and that is change. As a senior leadership team, you are spending your lives looking at what is changing, how we're going to deal with it, internally and externally. So Brooke Van Velden's work on workplace relations, which she's done a few items in terms of both HR and health and safety in the last year, creates an external change. You may also have staff changing, whether it's people leaving or new joiners, or you're gaining apprentices or trainees, or you might have people who are changing their skill sets or wanting to improve themselves and get themselves promoted. All of these internal and external changes have an effect. As a senior team, you're expected to look at what might happen and what do we need to do about it. An example of a scenario that came up for me last month and is now applying is the sun flares and the fact that they affect radio, GIS, satellite communications, and potentially, if it's a really bad one, could cause damage to those. And therefore, their trust power is looking at what happens if they switch off the grid. What are the implications for what you do? How much you manage it? There's a business continuity aspect in there, and there is a curiosity element in there, and there is also an understanding of dealing with the uncertainty of what happens when those events occur. So that's where the anticipation comes in. Unsurprisingly, you need to plan and resource what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And another one of the aspects that I often get asked about is not having enough financial resource to do the improvement that companies want. If you do not have the financial resource, that's fine, but you need to feed it back to the team to tell them why. If you can resource it in the future, great. Plan it in your plan for whatever financial year it will work, and look at what you can do in the interim to improve. There is no expectation that you will bankrupt your business to try and improve your health and safety, providing you can show that what you already have in place is sufficient. Trust and verify is what I mentioned earlier, which is really about trusting your staff, their training, their knowledge, their experience. That's why you've engaged them. But you also want to verify that what they have in place is appropriate. So you conduct audits, you conduct Gemba walks and site visits. You look at assurance processes, and you are skeptical. Am I really seeing the real story? There is a famous exercise that is often conducted with junior officials dealing with very senior managers called Truth to Power. Are people telling me the reality? Are people telling me the warts and all reality of what is going on in our business? If they are, great. But if not, what am I doing that's causing that to happen? Why are they not able to give me that information? And how do I change that? You need to monitor your performance and measure what's meaningful to you, and constructively plan improvement. One of the big tenets within WorkSafe's concepts, and which still exists even in our changing world, is the fact that you need to plan to improve your health and safety system. That might be as simple as sit in on a health and safety committee and find out what's going on with them. It might be as simple as doing a monthly or bi-monthly Gemba walk in locations that you don't normally go to. But whatever you're doing needs to look at improving how you can do your health and safety processes. Encourage honest reporting and focus on taking the business forward in your health and safety space. I recently had a situation where a CEO brought into a business wanted to implement TRIFR. So TRIFR is Total Recordable Incident Reporting. The problem with numbers like that is you don't have the context. If you understand what's going on with the business and you're monitoring what's happening, then actually the information becomes more valuable than just a number. And that's what the due diligence regulations require, is the ability to look beyond just the numbers in your business and understand the context. To help us with that, we have the 5 C's. So this was a concept that was developed initially with the Business Leaders Health and Safety Forum. And you'll have probably, if you're involved with them, have seen some of the work that they've done. And then this has been taken forward in the guidance that came out last year. And effectively, these are the characteristics that you need if you're a board member or a senior leadership team member, or even just a business owner. You need to have courage to speak up, courage to challenge the assumptions and your own experience, and admit when you don't know something. You also need to be able to create an environment where diverse views are welcome and people are encouraged to learn from mistakes. There are many influential voices pointing out that we learn best from our mistakes. Failing again and failing fast is good. Failing slow and once is bad. So if something doesn't work, don't be afraid to change it. Capability is your knowledge, your ability to understand the health and safety requirements within your individual business and within the industry you're working in. Seeking out professional development opportunities and having access to competent advice. There are lots of sources of professional development, and they are both commercial and non-commercial options. And understanding what's going to work for you personally, the way you learn, the way information that you want, will be quite valuable to you for doing that. As a senior leader, we ask you to be curious. Ask why. Why is this done like this? What is working well? How can I help? How can we do this better? How can we do this differently? Does this work for you? Does this kit work appropriately? Is this environment right? Are the people you're talking to giving you the information you need? Ask questions. You need to understand the context of your business. When we talk about risk and the next webinar, context is going to be really important. Understanding what the environment is for your business, what the boundaries of it are, where you set those boundaries and why is really important. Depending on where you are in the country, the environment that you're working in, the workforces you're working with, the spaces that you're working with will be quite different. You also need to obviously understand how your industry is changing and how your clientele is responding to those changes and how your staff are reacting to those as well. Finally, and probably most importantly, you need to care. You need to be able to demonstrate concern for people's well-being and demonstrate that health and safety is important. A lot of slogans put health and safety as their number one requirement of a business or the number one output. It's not true. The number one output is to make money so you continue operating. But actually being able to demonstrate that the health and safety of your team is important is a really important thing to do. And the only way you can do that is by engagement, offering options, seeing what will help people work, seeing what help people's needs, understanding why they do what they do and how they can do it better and how they would like you to help them do it better. So I had to think about surveying environments and GIS environments, and I kind of put together a quick slide on these are the kind of things that might be in your space. So obviously you work in field operations, you travel long distances, locations might be less than ideal. Sometimes they're remote and hazardous. There are lots of risks associated with that. How are you managing them? Do you think that management is effective? Simple example of that is the trialing of lone worker systems. There are quite a lot out on the market, but some of them rely on systems that actually may not operate in the space where you're in. They may not have SATCOM capability and the SATCOM may not work. Understanding what you're doing and how you're doing and understanding the risks of it is really important. If you work in a complex urban environment, it will be quite different to if you're working right in a rural space. Some of the kit you're using is changing. It's becoming more complex. You're using a lot more digital equipment and you're using different tools to help you do the job. The most important thing for that is understanding the skill sets and the training needs, and then how you apply it in the environment that you work in. And then another one, which if you're in the GIS space, is digital data management. How do you manage data? How do you transmit data? How do you ensure that the data is being handled appropriately and only seen by the people it needs to be seen by? Believe it or not, that comes into the health and safety space because it's a risk, because it creates uncertainty, and because it creates a training requirement for people to be able to do their job appropriately. And if people can't do their job appropriately, that creates a health and safety risk for me to deal with. Most of you will know that most of the time you end up doing site inductions and site assessments, and you might have some form of a job safety analysis to do the first time you go into a field to make sure that you know and understand what in there is going to cause you harm and how to deal with it. All of those things need to be managed and reviewed and assured. You need to look at how you can use emerging technology with updated safety systems. There are a lot of software systems around the support of safety. They're documentation on a computer. They're not going to help you not need a hard hat. And then the organizational culture. Depending on how big your business is, it might be really complicated or it might be dead simple. You need to emphasize accountability. People are accountable for telling you what's going on and for following the procedures they need to follow and identifying if they can't and how they can do the job safely instead. You need to have a culture of continuous improvement. In a business sense, you need it because otherwise you get left behind by your competitors. But in a health and safety sense, you need it because otherwise you get behind because people leave to go somewhere where they feel safe. And one thing that will be really good, and I have no visibility of how much you do this, but I hope a lot, is sharing best practice across your environment. One of the nicest things I have seen and the most supportive things I've seen is that the ports authorities have a learning teams space. So they get together, they talk about health and safety, they share incidents and how they've dealt with them across the authorities so they can each take away something and learn how they can do their jobs better. There's the same thing in the maritime sector more generally and in aviation. So my question for you here is, do you have something similar across the S&S team? I just wanted to cover the negative bit. So if you don't do it, this is what happens. So businesses, PCBUs that I mentioned earlier, can get fined up to $1.5 million. That doesn't happen a lot. Normally it's proportional. So most fines are about $500,000. Officers individually, personally, can be fined and sent to prison. So if there are 3 officers in the business, each of the 3 officers might be fined themselves up to $600,000. You can get director's insurance, and it will cover the cost of you going to court, but it won't cover your fine. A couple of examples I've put on the screen there, partly to show you that WorkSafe are not afraid to prosecute their own. So the police have been prosecuted, the NZDF have been prosecuted, various health boards have been prosecuted alongside businesses. The Abbey Caves tragedy, which you may be aware well of, that was a young man went into a cave, it rained, the cave filled with water, he drowned. The board of trustees of the school are liable for prosecution in that case. The teachers who made the decision about them going out there, workers. The board of trustees, officers. So there is potentially the officers being prosecuted for that. And then the final one on there, which most people will probably be well aware of, is the landmark case that happened last year, which was Ports of Auckland CEO Tony Gibson. None of the board members were prosecuted in that case, only Tony Gibson as the CEO. And I'm going to come on to that case in a moment. So I had a quick look for some cases within the industry, and I found a couple, but this is the one that I picked. So this was from 2019. NZ High Court, number 2345. And this was a spatial data company that had new technology and didn't train its field operations team. So they didn't communicate about the updated hazards, and they failed to do their due diligence. The ruling stressed that due diligence requires an immediate and systematic review of operations when changes occur, not just the installation of new equipment. If you buy a piece of equipment, you're going to change procedure. If you're going to change procedure, you need to review what the safety elements of that are. If you're buying a new piece of equipment, that change might start from when you're at base all the way through to using the piece of equipment on site and then taking it back again, and all the data associated with it. Their point was that you need to have robust channels for new risk and procedural changes to be conveyed. Communication. How do you talk to your team? When do you talk to your team? What do you tell them? And how do you make sure that they have understood the implications of that information you have provided? The case last year, which is now still subject to appeal, because Tony Gibson has appealed his sentence, related to an accident that happened at the Ports of Auckland where a stevedore was killed. The issue for Tony Gibson was not the act of the terrible death that occurred, but actually the fact that he knew that there were gaps in the safety system. He knew that there were plans to improve and that they were delayed, and he did not enforce the review and bring forward those changes. He was in a position of significant influence to change the safety system across the port, and he didn't do it. One of the things that has caused a lot of discussion is, why was he the only member of the board to be prosecuted? And the judge's answer was, well, he was the only person that had that direct relationship with the operational environment to say, why have you not done these improvements that we need in order to stop this happening? So if you think about those 6 due diligence requirements, he didn't trust and verify. He did know the operational environment, but he didn't ensure that action was being taken appropriately. There will be more on this, because this topic is going to recur when his appeal is heard and the outcome of that happens. But effectively, this is a landmark case for New Zealand. So after the heavy moment, what can you do to make sure that you are complying with due diligence requirements? Make sure you're doing safety audits and inspections. Inspections can be everything from making sure the vehicle is in good working order, that it has a fire extinguisher and a health and first aid kit, to actually inspecting the whole of a facility. Audits are also covering off the process. So normally the difference between an inspection and an audit is an inspection is a physical review of what exists. An audit is a process review of what happens. So if I come and do an audit for you, I look at the procedure and then I watch somebody following the procedure. And I'm saying to myself, are they following the procedure? And if not, why not? Is the procedure wrong, or is what they're doing wrong? If what they're doing is not following the procedure which is appropriate, is what they're doing still safe? That's what an audit is looking at. If somebody is not following a procedure, but they're still operating safely, is the procedure safe? Is the procedure wrong? Why are they operating like that? Ask the question. Show interest and curiosity, not judgment and expectation. You need to keep a log of your accident and incidents and near misses. Near misses are those moments where it could have gone horribly wrong, but it didn't. They are hugely valuable in health and safety terms, and people often don't think to note them down because they were, oh, it didn't actually happen. But those near misses are the opportunity to say there's a gap in our process and what can we do about it? When you have accidents and near misses, you need to investigate them. The level of investigation depends on how significant they are for you. So if you're forever having really minor accidents, but they're all in the same space, you need to investigate it. If you investigate something, you do need to go and close the loop and tell the people who were involved in the incident what the outcome of the investigation was. You need to test it to make sure it works, and you need to make sure that the changes that you make as a result are effective. You should have health and safety meetings. Depending on how big your team is, that can operate in a number of ways. If you're just a couple of you, it might be over a cup of tea on a Monday morning. If you are 150 people strong, you probably have a health and safety committee. But health and safety meetings are the basic communication tool and mechanism by which we have worker participation, which is a legal requirement. And it is the opportunity for the staff to say, this doesn't work for us, can we change it? You need to have training. The training you have depends on what you're doing and is related specifically to the task you need to do. Training is not reading the procedure. You need to make sure your equipment is maintained. And as I'm sure you're aware, that you need to make sure that you plan in a replacement of their equipment. Again, whether it's a theodolite or whether it is a ute, you need to plan, this is how long it's going to last and this is what we're going to do to replace it. If it's something in the software space, it used to be 18 months. I think it's now 3 months, potentially be upgraded to something different. You need to also plan the management of those positions that you can't do without. They might be singleton positions, they might be key roles, they might be where you've got a skills gap. How are you going to deal with those and how are you going to improve them? What are you going to do about it to make sure that that is resolved? Those are operational activities. The culmination of the operational activity, if you have a board, is a board report. Board reporting, again, was changed last year to provide some best practice. And the 6 items I have on the screen constitute the complexity and the subjects that you should be covering off. Depending on how big your business is, your board report might be 1 page or it might be 7 pages, preferably 1 page. You look at performance. So what are you measuring? What is the performance that you are measuring? And what does the so what of that performance mean for you as a senior leadership team? It might be a training program completed. It might be introduction of a new piece of equipment. It might be making sure that the vehicles are upgraded to cope with four-wheel drive environment. How is that program happening, and what is happening in the meantime? Assurance. So assurance is your audit and inspection program. And the question for the senior team is, what does it mean for us? So as an ISO auditor, I come back and I go, I found 4 findings and 3 opportunities for improvement and 1 positive finding. You don't go, oh, right, okay, that's 5 findings and 3 or 4 opportunities for improvement. You go, what are they? What are the implications? And what can we do about them? If we had a positive finding, how can we support that to grow? You need to look at what your risks are and what your risk profile is and understand what that means for you. One of the changes this year that I think is actually in many ways quite positive is the focus on critical risk. What are the critical risks in your business? How effectively are they being controlled? Are you comfortable that you've done everything you can about those critical risks? There are quite a few businesses I know that eliminate critical risks and just don't do the work. That's a simple solution if you can do it strategically. What are your relationships? What are the most important relationships that you have? So, for example, these can be with your supply chain, your client base, your contractors that you use to help you with different pieces of work. It can be with your team. If you have union involvement, it'll be with your unions, and so on and so forth. How are those relationships being monitored? And how do I know that they're good? And what can I do to make them better? One of the areas that I often see is contractor use. And I mentioned earlier about pre-qualification. If you have a contractor and you pre-qualify them because you've looked at their health and safety, a year later, are you actually happy that the pre-qualification reflects the experience you've had with them? You need to ask the questions of yourselves. Does my relationship with this company look good? And if so, why? Or look bad? And if so, why? And in doing that, you will understand where you're instinctively heading in terms of, I really don't want to work with that business again because, or I really do want to get back into bed with that business because. Understanding those relationships is really important. You need to look at your resources. So I mentioned about key persons and new equipment. You also need to look at your procedures and make sure that somebody is reviewing them on a regular basis and make sure that they are still valid for what you're doing and that your processes are going to fit you for the next period, whether it's 6 months or a year or however long, and make sure that you have what you need in order to do the work that you want to do. If you're a senior leadership team or a board, you're thinking about what's the next thing? Where are we going next? How are we going to grow the business, change the business, respond to changing requirements? All of those require resource. Do you have the resources you need to do that? If not, what resources are you going to obtain? The last item, perhaps the most surprising one, is due diligence itself. What is the plan for managing the officer's own due diligence development activity? Is it being managed and does it reflect in your governance decisions? This might be everyone has to conduct a Gemba over the course of 6 months. Everyone has to go and do due diligence training. Everyone has to go and understand a specific critical risk and then bring back their view on whether that critical risk is being managed appropriately. When you've done that, you can apply the 5 C's. So you can care, be curious, consider, check your capability, and understand the context of those situations to make sure that what you're doing is right. You can challenge why things aren't being done the way you're expecting and the implications that something might be delayed that would materially improve the safety in your business. And you can assure yourselves that reasonably practicable, which is the legal requirement, is being done. So, due diligence is essential. It's those 6 factors. But if you want to take something away, be curious, go and ask questions, don't make assumptions, and do it without judgment. So don't expect people to give you the answer that you think is the right answer. See what they say. You need to identify and actively manage your critical risks, but also be aware of your other risks and how you're going to control them. And then I would challenge you today to take away 1 step. What are you going to do from tomorrow? I am going to be providing a couple of resources as a part of this webinar. I'm going to provide you with a board self-assessment process, which is based on the one that was produced last year. And I am going to provide you with a draft board report for your operational staff. Those should help you with what do we actually need to be reporting, and is the question that we're asking the right question. My final thought would be to embrace continuous improvement and remember that adapting to change and enhancing your processes will enhance your business, and therefore it's good practice for your business. It will also help your team be very well about working with you and encourage your team to stay. Thank you very much for your attendance. If there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was a very informative presentation, and I'm sure that a lot of our members have some takeaways from there. For all of our members who are online, if you do have any questions, can you please pop them into the Slido box, and Emma will answer those. If we don't have any questions coming through, we'll wrap up for today, and I welcome you all to join us on Emma's following presentation. And we'll just give this a minute to see if any questions come through.
It's a lot of information. It's a lot of information to take in and think about. What I would say to everyone is just have a look at what you are doing. And it might not be good, wrong. It might not be good or bad. It is what it is. But actually, are you comfortable with it? If you're comfortable with it, then you're probably on the right track.
Great. Thank you, Emma. All right. Well, there's no questions coming through. So we'll wrap up today's webinar. So thank you once again, Emma, for presenting to our members. We really appreciate your time. And for our members on board, if you do have any questions that you think of once this webinar wraps up, please email them to us at Survey and Spatial, and we will forward them on to Emma for a response. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, everybody.